Yeah, as I said, it's my honor to be here today and to be part of the Bucket List community to help kick off the conference. And as I was preparing for today's session, I had a look at the lineup of speakers and I thought, wow, this is an amazing opportunity for everybody on the line here to impact change. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is we all know, I think everybody on the line here does not need to be convinced about the power of appreciation and the impact that that can have on somebody in their work life, in their personal life, and just in their relationships overall. And so we're all here today to not necessarily just learn how to do that more effectively, but to learn how to empower others to do that more effectively. So we've just kind of 10x'd our impact by showing and enabling others to create a culture of appreciation in their workplaces. We really stand to have a really big impact on people's working lives. So that was my little reflection for today. Now, in this first session, in the next half hour or so, I'm going to share some of our research on why employee recognition is such an important driver of people doing great work. So I'll sort of kick off with like the lay of the land, but then we're going to go really quickly into the important role of HR in stewarding this work. And as I said, when I look at the lineup of speakers, we're just going to scratch the surface in 30 minutes. But I noticed some of the sessions scheduled for later today and tomorrow will really give you the opportunity to go deep. Some of these issues that we're going to talk about today are challenging. They're not easy to solve for. And so you'll have the opportunity to hear from the best and go deep into some of those issues. So after a bit of a bumpy start, we're going to get this party started. And I'm going to do this with a reflection exercise. So now, because my camera's not working, I can't see people, they can't see me. So we're going to do this in kind of anonymous mode, which I think will be great. So if you will, bear with me. We're going to take about 5 minutes and it will be, and we'll save that poll for later, Rebecca. The one on the screen, we'll save that one for later. Okay, so what I want you to do is take a couple of minutes and you can close your eyes if you want. You don't have to close your eyes. But I want you to recall a positive experience. So a recent positive experience or something that made you feel grateful. So this could be a kind gesture from a friend. It could be a beautiful moment in nature, or it could be a work achievement that you're feeling really proud of. So think of that positive experience. As you recall this experience, focus on the details. What did you see? What did you hear? And what did you feel from this experience? Who was involved? And think about what made this moment so special for you. Now we're going to move from thought to feeling. Okay, so reflect on your feelings about this event. Consider how this experience made you feel. Did it bring you joy, comfort, a sense of accomplishment or a connection? Allow yourselves to fully experience these emotions. And next, I'd like you to put your appreciation into words. So now we're going to practice expressing your appreciation for this experience. And here's where I will invite you to type your words of appreciation into the chat. So you don't need to put any names. You don't need to put any details that'll identify yourself, but we are in a safe space here. So I invite you to express your appreciation to this anonymous person in the chat. And so at this point, we're really just practicing how to turn our feelings of appreciation into words. You might say something like, I'm grateful for the kindness of my friend who has supported me for these last few months as I've been experiencing personal problems. Or you might say something like, it made me feel good when my coworker stood up for me in last week's meeting. So I'm going to give you a moment to do that now. So if you're comfortable, put your words of appreciation anonymously into the chat. Wow, what an amazing and inspiring way to kick off this conference. So they're still coming in fast and furious, people's words of appreciation. So as you continue with this exercise, I'm going to challenge everyone to take it one step further and share your appreciation with the person themselves. So you don't have to do this, but if you're comfortable, I would encourage you that at some point today, you take those words, you take that spirit in which you're giving the appreciation and actually share it with the person that you're thinking about right now. Thank you all so much for participating in this. You never know how these things are going to go, if people are going to be comfortable, but it looks like we have a very appreciative group here today who are really tuned into these feelings. So thank you for going through that with me. One thing you might have noticed with this audience reflection is I didn't ask you to start thinking about a person you appreciate or how you can show appreciation for that person. I asked you to start thinking about the positive experience, and then you unpack from there. So you start by reflecting. So this is really all about reflection or mindfulness. And so you start by thinking about the positive experience, and then you move through the details, the feeling, putting it into words. Now I can see we have some raised hands. I believe, Rebecca, we're going to keep the questions for the end unless there's some technical issue we need to deal with right away.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you so much. All right. So where are we going with this? So as I mentioned at the beginning, today's session is really about setting the stage for building a culture of appreciation in your workplace. I know we have a lot of folks from HR on the line today. We have a lot of leaders on the line, people with just a special interest in increasing this habit. in their own practice. And I think what I'd like to bring to the group today is a perspective which is based on data and research. So as Rebecca mentioned, I'm from Great Place to Work. And who are we? We're world leaders in workplace assessment. We run the largest employee survey in the world, each year representing about 10 million employees in 10,000 companies in almost 100 countries around the world. So we have a lot of data. And what we do is we use this data for, to feed it back to companies so that they can improve their workplace. Absolutely, that's the most important part of what we do. We also use this data to recognize companies when we know they've been able to create a great workplace culture. So you've probably seen our logo or a stamp of Great Place to Work certified organizations in the US and Canada and around the world. But the third important thing we do is, because we have this huge collection of data, we're able to conduct thought leadership research to sort of get at what's behind the employee experience. And so this data means that we really know what it takes to create a great place to work, but it doesn't have really anything to do with perks and programs in the workplace. It has everything to do with the relationships that leaders are cultivating. Oh, here I got something. Are you able to move your picture so that it does not see the slides? Okay, let me see. Sorry, I'm just trying to process. There is a technical issue here. Oh, there. Okay, gotcha. Let me see if I can move that. How's that? Better?
Yeah, maybe if you go back to your slide, yeah, there we go. Perfect.
Good? All right.
Thank you, Alison.
In the moment. Thank you for that feedback. Okay. So as I was saying, a Great Place to Work, we know what it takes to create a great workplace environment. And it's really not about perks and benefits, but it's all about the relationships that people are fostering at work, with the people they work with, and with the people that they supervise. And so one of the things that we've discovered from our research around employee recognition is that when we're thinking about building great workplaces start with great leadership. And so we've identified 9 key leadership practices that help build trust, and they help build high trust workplaces. And so you can see on the wheel, we have things like listening is in the middle. That's super important. We have sharing, celebrating, and so on. But what you'll notice is one of the leadership practices we've outlined here is thanking. And I'm not sure if you're seeing the animations there, but it doesn't matter. So one of the key leadership behaviors we've discovered is thanking. And through our research, we've discovered that thanking behavior from leaders is the most powerful driver of great work. From a very early age, as human beings, we crave recognition from our parents, teachers, friends. We know that. And our desire for positive affirmation is so strong, particularly during developmental periods, that we can even perceive a neutral reaction as a negative one. So think about a student in school and they do what they think is good work, and it's good work, but they don't receive any feedback from their teacher. They might begin to think that that work wasn't good. In fact, they didn't receive any negative feedback, but they didn't receive positive feedback. And so this craving for feedback and affirmation holds true as we move into the workplace. And so what we did was last year we did a study on discretionary effort. And what we found is that when people agree that everyone has the opportunity to get special recognition at work, they are 2.2 times more likely to give extra to get the job done. And when they hear that feedback coming from a senior leader, that jumps to 3.6 times more likely to give extra to get the job done. And so what is that telling us? It's telling us that recognition, when it comes from leaders, is a powerful motivator of discretionary effort. And if it comes from a leader 1 level up or 2 levels up, it's even more powerful. Now, as part of this study, we also examined employee comments. Like when we run our survey, we also give employees the opportunity to share what makes this a great place to work in their own words. And when we look at this qualitative data, for the people that are agree that everyone has the opportunity to get special recognition, we see a lot of really powerful words coming up in these comments. I feel lucky, my workplace is uplifting, high degree of work enjoyment, even I feel I have an opportunity to be successful in my career. And what we noticed is when people don't agree that everyone has the opportunity to get special recognition, we see different words appearing in the comments, like favoritism, popularity contest, discrimination, and so on. And so this, I think if there was ever a strong business case for creating a culture of appreciation, this is it. When you show appreciation to employees, first of all, people crave it. And when they receive it, they do their best work, okay? So now we're ready for the second poll, Rebecca, if you have it ready. And this question is, when was the last time you received meaningful appreciation from your boss? So I want to clarify, what do we mean by meaningful appreciation? Actual specific feedback, appreciation, where you know what behavior it is you're being recognized for, and you also know the impact it had on the person doing the recognizing or another person. So let's see the scores coming in.
All right, poll's still running. People are getting their answers in last minute. I'll close the poll in 3, 2, 1. All right, and I'll share the results now. Alison, can you see these up on your screen?
I can. Okay, so what a lucky group we have. 30% of people on the line today received appreciation, meaningful appreciation from their boss in the past week, and another 33% in the past month. So those are some pretty great statistics, I think. We got 19% in the past 6 months, 10% in the past year, and 7% of people on the line said never. So can someone help them find a new job? Because we all need appreciation in our working life. So I'm going to turn this off and share with you what we find out there in the great wide world. So this is one of the questions. Yeah, hugs to the 7%. I love that. We appreciate you for being here. Okay, so when we take a look at the data that comes in from our survey, there is one question on our survey that we ask, which is management shows appreciation for good work and extra effort. And what we found is that in a typical Canadian workplace, and the stats are pretty similar for the US, 57% of people agree with this statement. Management shows appreciation for good work and extra effort. But when we isolate it to what we call the best workplaces, those organizations recognized for having the highest levels of trust, it jumps to 88%. So in a typical workplace, just over half of people agree with this statement, but in a great workplace, almost 9 out of 10 people agree with this statement. So you can see that there's a fairly big gap there between typical workplaces and great ones. So when we look at the data a little bit more closely, we begin to ask why. So we know that recognition is the most important driver of great work, or one of the most important drivers, the most important driver. But we also know that just over half of people are receiving meaningful recognition or appreciation from their boss on a regular basis. So why do we think this is? So I'm going to present a couple of reasons here, and if you have ideas, you can chat them in on your own as well. So I think the first reason would be perhaps people don't know how. They're not comfortable with showing their appreciation on a regular basis. And that could be one of the key reasons that they're not exhibiting this behavior. It is a habit. Showing appreciation is a habit. So it could be we have leaders that have every intention of showing appreciation. They notice those moments. They just haven't developed it as a habit yet. So they need some help with habit formation. There also is this big thing called culture. And so we know that in some workplaces, in great workplaces, there is a culture of appreciation where people share this feedback freely and openly. And then in other workplaces, it just doesn't happen. We also know that there is a little bit of reluctance on some leaders' part to recognize employees for fear that they might be overpraising. So overpraising is when you're saying, well, why would I thank this person for doing it? They're just doing their job. And we have studied this in depth, and the reality is overpraising isn't really a thing. As long as you are providing feedback that's authentic and specific, there's no need to worry about overpraising. So a fourth reason that I think sometimes we don't see as much recognition behavior as we would, as we should, is we sometimes get confused between the terms recognition and appreciation. So often we use these terms interchangeably, but I think there's some subtle differences in the terminology which might impact people's behavior, leaders' behavior. And so some simple reframing of the language of the terminology might help with this. So just to give a couple of examples here, when we think of recognition, we often think of awards or like something, a special recognition, which is triggered by, could be triggered by outcomes, or it could be triggered by results. When we think of appreciation, we think more of everyday behaviors. So showing appreciation in the moment when you see a behavior that you appreciate. And there's no hard and fast rules here, but what I'm just presenting is that sometimes we just need to reframe our perceptions in order to adopt this behavior more readily. When we think of recognition, we often think that there should be some reward that goes along with it. So it could be a gift, it could be a gift card, it could be a certificate, a trophy. But recognition, we're often considered to think, oh, what do I get for that? Whereas when someone expresses appreciation, there's no gift needed, really. I mean, and it would even not even be appropriate when you come up to someone and say, I really appreciated how you stood up for me in that meeting. It would be weird, actually, to have a gift associated with that. The next one is what we're acknowledging, okay, the behavior. So recognition tends to be tied to bigger achievements. As I said, it could be outcomes, results, or something big that you did. Whereas appreciation can be given for small wins, right? You got our call time down by 30 seconds today. Way to go. That was awesome. Way to direct the customers and so on. So it doesn't need to be a big thing for you to show appreciation. When we think of recognition, we also think dollars and cents. So how much is this going to cost me? Do I have a budget for this? Do I have a budget for gift cards or coffee cards or whatever it is your organization is giving? Do I have a budget for bucket list or whatever platform you're using? When we show appreciation, the investment is more in terms of your time and your effort. So noticing the behavior and taking the time and effort to say that to the person. And then the last one I want to say is recognition. We often think of that more coming from the leader, right? Whereas when we think about appreciation, this could come from anyone. It could come from your peers. It could come from people who report to you that like your leadership style. It could come from your leader as well. But appreciation sort of opens it up to come from anyone. And so I think to summarize it, and the reason I think maybe a bit of reframing could be useful is when we think recognition, we might be conditioned to think in a bit of a scarcity mindset. Like, I only have so many recognitions I can give, and is this behavior worthy of recognition? But when we think about showing appreciation, we have more of an abundance mindset because you can give infinite amount of appreciation and it doesn't really need to dilute that appreciation as long as it is sincere, specific, and heartfelt. Okay, so like I say, it's not like a right or wrong thing, but I found for myself it's been helpful to reframe recognition versus appreciation. And in every workplace, people need both. They need to be recognized for those formal wins, but they also need the day-to-day appreciation. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. How are we doing for time? Are we good for time, Becca, still? I know we started a little bit late.
Yeah, no, you're still good. We have about 10, 12 minutes.
Okay, good. All right. So hopefully this last slide is going to be something that you can take away in terms of, so right now I'm really speaking to the HR audience in the room. So whose job is it to show recognition? Is it HR's job? No, it is not. It's the job of the leader. So we already heard today that recognition, especially when it comes from the leaders, is going to be the most powerful driver of great work. But HR has a role in this too, right? So just because doing all of the recognitions certainly should not land on HR doesn't mean you don't have work to do in stewarding a culture of appreciation within your workplace. And I'm just going to give a little spoiler alert. As I was coming up with this list, I was really thrilled to see we have some awesome sessions coming up today and tomorrow that will address almost every one of these top 10 tips that I'm about to share. Okay, so the first piece, number one, is to establish some kind of recognition policy. So the role of HR is to really lobby for some kind of recognition policy within your workplace. And so this notion of, oh yeah, we have a recognition culture, but all leaders just do their own things. I don't really buy it, okay? Because I think leaders need to see that it's an expected part of their job, that there's a policy, or maybe policy is too strong a word, guidelines around recognition, and most importantly, some kind of a budget associated with it as well. So I don't know if you've ever suggested to a leader, something great's going on in your team, maybe you should thank your team. And then the question they come back with is, what's my budget? And they don't have one. So that can be a really difficult conversation. So I would say the biggest takeaway for HR is if your organization already has a tool or a platform like Bucket List, great, because a lot of these decisions are built into that tool. There's guidelines there. If you're not ready to invest in a formal program, a formal recognition program or tool, that's okay too. And with many smaller organizations, it's just not needed. But I would say make sure that there's at least some discussion and buy-in at the senior most level, and that leaders know this is encouraged and expected as part of your job. And we've even set aside this budget for you to do that. So that's sort of the minimum there is policy or guidelines, okay? And you may need to lobby for this. Not every organization buys in. And so there's more coming on how you could do that. Okay, the second point here, 10 ways HR can steward a culture of appreciation, is make it easy. Make it easy for leaders to recognize their people. Your job in HR is definitely not to do all the recognizing, but if you can make it easy for leaders to develop the habit, then your impact will be tenfold. So give leaders tools. It could be something like a recognition calendar, reminding them to recognize specific things at specific times of the year. It could be a list of low or no cost ways to show appreciation for their team members. Taking it to the next level, if you're able to tap into existing enterprise data, could be like customer feedback. These can serve as great prompts for leaders. So I noticed we had some great customer satisfaction scores coming in for so-and-so. Would you like that data? Then you can recognize the person and so on. So tap into your data, give prompts to leaders, but the main thing is it's not your job to do all the recognizing, but it is your job to make it easier for leaders to develop those habits. Okay, next one is role model. So this one is easy. The more leaders see this behavior happening in their organization, the more likely they are to do it. And so if we see HR role modeling the behavior, then leaders are more likely to take their cue and follow through. Next one is recognize recognition. When we celebrate leaders who recognize their people, what we're really doing is holding them up as role models for others to follow. And this, as I mentioned, can be most powerful when a senior leader in your organization exhibits the behavior. It can have a huge impact. Other leaders will follow. If you have a VP or a CEO that recognizes, that will filter through your organization very, very quickly. People will want to model that behavior. Next one we talked about a little bit already, which is recognize the big things, but don't forget to recognize the small wins as well. And most people find it easier to recognize employees in certain departments or roles because they have the easiest metrics to tap into. So it could be like maybe there's a company KPI and what a certain department produces might be a little bit more visible than the work done in other departments. So it's great to celebrate these big wins, achieving the KPIs, but don't forget about celebrating the smaller or less obvious successes as well. A lot of people in your organization are doing great work every day, and their work doesn't necessarily call attention to itself. And so when you recognize those underlying behaviors, the unsung heroes, what you're doing is really reinforcing for those folks, that they're having an impact on the organization, even though it might not be as visible as sales, for instance. Okay, next one. Democratize recognition. So what do we mean by this? Now, we did hear today that being recognized by a leader is extremely motivating, even better if it comes from your leader's leader. But recognition from peers can also be super meaningful and motivating for employees. So I'm not saying that leader recognition is required, but peer recognition can also be very powerful. Why? Because it helps to build the culture, right? So it increases the number of opportunities for employees to receive recognition by widening the pool of people who are saying thank you. It reinforces the desired behaviors without resorting to sort of explicit top-down recognition. And it also puts the power to recognize in everyone's hands so they can create a more sustainable, authentic source of appreciation. So peer recognition doesn't replace recognition from leaders, but super important to think about that. Next one, make it meaningful. Gestures of gratitude should be meaningful for the recipient. And so we know it's not always possible to offer a custom recognition for every single employee. You do want to give careful thought as HR professionals to the options that you standardize on. So for example, a bottle of wine might not be a meaningful recognition for someone who doesn't drink. So ask your employees what type of recognition they find most meaningful. You'll probably be surprised to find a lot of people will say a genuine expression of thankfulness is what inspires them to do their best work. Okay, next one, align with your values. So what we're seeing increasingly in the companies we work with are values awards. So people overtly being recognized for living the values. This is a great way to reinforce the behaviors you want to see more of in your organization, because we know what gets recognized gets repeated. But I would also take it a step further here and say that HR should monitor what is getting recognized across the organization to make sure that what's getting recognized is actually in line with your values. So just as an example, if your company espouses to support work-life balance, but all that gets recognized are people working after hours late, cars in the parking lot on the weekends or so on, there's a little bit of a disconnect there. So make sure that what's getting recognized is aligned with the values that you're espousing. This next one is the most important takeaway, I think, for leaders, and you're going to hear more about this. I think there's a session later today on this, and that is ensure fairness. And I would say this is the most important role of HR in stewarding a culture of appreciation, is to really understand what's currently getting recognized, who is currently getting recognized, and looking at this through a DEI lens. So nothing is going to derail your recognition culture faster than the perception that all employees don't have equal opportunity to get recognition. So look at the consistency of recognition behavior across job roles, across departments. Even look for work arrangement in office or hybrid. I think we're going to hear about that today. It can be trickier to recognize in different work modes. And just make sure that whatever program you have, everyone has the opportunity to receive special recognition. And then last but not least, make a business case. So as I said, if you're already a bucket list subscriber, then obviously your leadership is bought into the power of appreciation. But if your organization is not yet there, you may need to do a little convincing. So make a business case for creating programs, budgets, initiatives that will encourage recognition throughout your organization. To do this, you're going to need to gather some data to show the impact of strong recognition culture on your business. How do you do that? Well, we work with a lot of organizations at Great Place to Work where we can directly tie the engagement of those employees with how much recognition they receive. So if you're running a survey or anything like that, that's easy to put those two pieces together. But you can also tie in terms of like this discretionary effort piece, how people who receive recognition are reporting their working life, etc. So that is it for me now. And I think we've got just a couple minutes left now for questions. So back over to you, Becca.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Allison. The chat is popping off. People are really resonating and sharing ideas on the topics that you're talking about. So thank you so much for such a great talk, Allison, and so many great key takeaways.